Red button's been pushed, Kirk.
Thanks for pushing it.
It's blue these days, which is very unsatisfying.
It's red on my end.
Oh, it says red. It says recording and the timer in red, but the button to click start recording is blue.
Why wouldn't that button be green?
I don't
Green
know.
means go.
The end recording tab is red.
That makes sense to me. Stop.
But blue?
Pull it together, StreamYard.
This is probably its biggest issue. It is, on my end at least, improved our recordings.
Yeah, I think it has as well.
Only took us 5 years.
Still learning.
Well, Kirk, last episode we sat here and talked, and I was just coming off. I was still kind of hanging on the tail end of sickness, and now we've swapped.
Yeah, well, you're an asshole because you put it into the world. Last episode, I stepped away for a moment, and Brakken had the floor all by himself without me there. And he said, Kirk's going to get sick. I could tell, something like that. I didn't know you said that. A day later, flu, bam. And I think it's your fault. So you owe me 4 days of my life, 2 days of workman's comp, and then whatever the fee is for quality of life and missing 4 days of training is. So I
gave you a soft reset. You're not going to have to take a full deload anytime soon. This was a gift. This is a holiday gift.
This is a holiday gift. This is this is 3 years in a row getting sick over the New Year's time frame. Last 2 years was COVID. I looked back last year. I took 8 straight days off because of COVID. This isn't that, but it's not good. And this is the flu. So I'm 3 for 3 and bringing in the new year with my tail between my legs. Isn't that just lovely?
You're going to have to start planning for this. You have to do something big like end of November, December, and then take your hard reset just as part of sickness.
I'm hoping this is my last day off. I don't think I should try running today, but whatever. This conversation, Brakken, I mean, are you not sick of having this I'm sick conversation? It is with everybody. Nobody here is special. Nobody here is exempt from it. It just is what it is. I got a few people I'm working with. We're literally like day for day on not feeling well, right? Mm-hmm. And I got 2 in particular who they're newer. And the world is ending. I've worked so hard for my fitness and I'm going to lose my fitness. And I feel so bad I can't get the training in. And I have a race in March. Oh my God, this is going to set me back. And I wish I could just give everybody like a big, gross, flu-ridden hug and be like, it's going to be okay. I promise you. But it's so easy to feel like missing training and then also feeling like death while missing training is just like exponentially setting you back. Thank God over the years I've learned it's not the case as long as you've been consistent surrounding that. But it's just easy to freak out for people.
Yeah. I had 2 athletes reach out to me right before the holidays and say, hey, just as a heads up, I'm planning on taking the next 7 to 10 days of just not really training. I'll get to it if I get to it, but I'm just not even going to fight it this holiday season. And I almost had like a visceral reaction to it because I'm so used to having to try to convince people that it's okay to take a down week, that having someone reach out and say, hey, just don't even bother programming anything. I'm not going to do anything for the next 7 days. It was almost jarring. And I was so proud of them, but I didn't know how to really say it. I was just like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
The only problem with that, because I've had a few do that as well, which I respect. Hey, that makes my life simple. I don't want to program stuff you're not going to do. And if you know yourself well enough, you want to enjoy the holidays. But I swear, every time somebody does that around this time of year, they take their holiday off and then they get sick and then they lose another 3 to 7 days. And suddenly it's like 2 weeks because they're around a bunch of people. And so sometimes that can bite you in the butt a little bit. But either way, we're all relaxing, I guess.
Final little bit of just dilly-dallying before we get into the episode.
Yeah.
My high school coach said something, I want to say it was either sophomore or junior year. Very first day of cross country, we were running, I want to say like 6x800 hard on the cross country course because that's what we always did. First week was like hell week, kind of
3 by a mile, 6 by 800,
just hard. And there were 3 of us. We were good friends, same class in school, and we were the top 3 runners, and we just alternate who was leading intervals or having a good day, but we were the top 3 on the team, and it was kinda definitive, and one of us was like his name was Chris. He was probably the best cross country runner. Not probably, he was the best cross country runner out of us, and he had done the most work, I thought, over the summer, and he started chafing and blistering during the first workout and he eventually dropped out of the workout. He's like, "Coach, I can't do this. I'm going to be like bleeding. I need to stop." And the coach said, "Blisters mean that you haven't been training, and chafing means you haven't been training." And that stuck with me. And I don't even know if it's right, but it's one of those where when it's right, it's correct, and the rest of the time it's not. But I
Mm.
can't help every time I blister or chafe now, I have like a guilty conscience because I hear my coach saying, "That means you haven't been training." Well, I blistered on January 1st, Kirk. I went out for a 10-mile run, which is my longest run in a while, and I immediately got a blister on my heel. And it just hit me like, "Yep, where's Bicky was right. I haven't been training."
Was it a new pair of shoes, however?
No, it was a pair of shoes I've never run flat in. The Max 2,
Oh, sure.
which I think is a really, really good trail shoe. I've only run technical or Hillian, and I've never just like run a metronome stride for 10 miles, which is what
Mm.
I did during this. And it was a little wet. I don't know if it was that shoe has really grippy heels, really grippy.
I mean,
And I
so grippy, they're almost hard to get on. Like,
yeah.
the inside of the shoe is grippy, like, every part of that shoe is grippy.
Yeah, it's like shark skin where if
It
your
bite.
heel tries to pull up, it bites in. And so it
Mhm,
needs the right sock for it. And I don't know, that
mhm.
just maybe I am out of shape. I don't know what it is. I mean, I am out of shape, but anyway, I have this guilty association every time with blisters or chafing. It just all I hear is my coach saying, "Yep, Bracken, you're out of shape."
You know, that logic probably follows, I'm gonna say 75% of the time. New shoes, wrong apparel, little chubby rubbing on something, gotta be careful. I hate chafe. If I go for a run with a cutoff or
Mhm.
shirtless in the summer, my bat wings, my lats chafe in my armpit every single time.
Yeah.
Even if I'm training hard, that would be like an exception. Inner thigh rub, if they do, right? Maybe
Mhm. I
that's
think there's
unavoidable.
no correlation unless there's correlation.
Then it's 100% correlated.
Yeah. Like if you're out of shape and you chafe, it's because you haven't been running and you didn't prepare correctly. Or if you get a blister because you haven't run in months, it's 100% because you haven't been training. But
Mhm.
sometimes you just get random blisters. I remember I got a toe blister in my first 50K I did. Had nothing to do with my training. It's because
You
I'd
know what?
never run longer than 20 miles in those shoes, and they were just a little tight on my toe, and the pointy toe box got me. I was in great shape.
You know what you gotta be careful of? This will get me every, I don't know, 6 weeks. You don't cut your toenails often enough, you just kinda let it go, and then that toenail from your 3rd toe, the corner of it digs into the side of your 2nd toe, which is your long Morton's toe or whatever you call it, and then all of a sudden you got a blister or a bloody spot there, and you go,
Mhm.
"God, Kirk, you better cut your damn toenails, son." Then I cut them, and then that process starts itself all over until it happens again. You ever deal with that?
I do because my toes curl into each other, and so it'll just wear like a channel right there in my toe, but mine's worse when I first cut them, actually. I
Mine is
can't
not.
cut my toenails closer than, like, 2 or 3 days to any big, long effort. A race or a long run, I need to if it's Saturday, I cut mine on, like, Monday or Tuesday. I cut them a little short and then give them like, 4 or 5 days just to, like, wear in.
What are we filling this
This
airwave
is
with right now, Bracken?
right.
Help our
This is
listeners.
real, Kirk.
We're both responsible.
Hard
I
pivot.
I got a bunch of meds in me, so I have an excuse. I don't know if you do, so maybe we just get to
No
business.
meds. High on
Uh-huh.
life.
Uh-huh.
Hard pivot. So we
Wait, I'm
are
not high on anything. Let's clear that up. Just
you're
more
low on sickness, I'm
cottony
high on life.
on Dayquil and ibuprofen. All right.
Alright, so this is episode 2 in our how we think about blank series. We started with how we think about warming up, and today is going to be how we think about like speed, getting faster. How we think about that for runners. And I'm actually going to start out with a Q&A question to kind of set the mood. This is going to dim our lights and put on some jazz for us, Kirk. You
Mm.
ready?
I feel like it should be like hard rock or something up tempo, some alternative. If we're trying
Maybe.
to get faster,
But are we getting fast through rock or jazz? That's the real question today.
good question.
All right, kicking it off. This is from Jorge. All right, in the world of results driven practice, sprints are normally administered directly following easy runs. I can't help but wonder if high level long distance runners would actually derive greater performance benefits by performing their sprints as a standalone session, at least during the general phase, that is exclusively dedicated to improving speed reserve. I would be grateful if you guys could share your thoughts on this. And this right here, I think encapsulates the way any coach, exercise physiologist, outsider would look at how any sport approaches the things that are not their bread and butter, which
Mm-hmm.
is you guys are doing this one thing in a really backwards way. Wouldn't it be better if you just focus on that thing and get better at it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the answer is absolutely yes.
Or absolutely no,
Correct. It's the
depending.
way, but distance runners sprint the way they lift for the most part. It's an add on after you've done what you consider your most important work so that it doesn't get in the way of the real work. And you can't handle a full session of that because it would make you so sore. And you don't want to be pulled away from your main work, which is running. And so I'm going to add on whatever I can after the day's done. And what I get from it, I'm going to get from it because anything's going to improve me based on doing nothing. So I'm a distance runner.
Yeah. I mean, there's like three places I want to direct this right out of the gates.
Okay.
The first is picking holes and not saying it what isn't true. Why don't we work these in a vacuum? At the same time, when on earth does a distance runner need to access their top end unless they're already under duress from previous running in the race? Right.
Mhm.
So are we not teaching to the test by letting people run sprints clean? Like, what good is that? We never are going to
Yeah.
have the chance to do that on course. On the other hand, we minimize actual potential of those sprints integrity by tiring ourselves first and then asking ourselves to sprint afterwards in a session. And you could come at it from both sides of the coin
Mhm.
very easily, right?
Yeah, you could. And I think the general answer is, Jorge, you are correct. If this is a periodized season and you have your general preparation phase and you're prioritizing aerobic development and you're not prioritizing a huge amount of anaerobic running, then dedicate a few sessions per week where you're coming in fresh and doing true speed work, form work, high end, like maximal sprints, and do your aerobic conditioning after that. Yes. And then throughout the season, you transition into that happening towards the end of races or towards the end of workouts or like fast finish interval sessions to take the true speed mechanical sprinting you've developed and pair it with end of race kicking power. I think, yes, you are absolutely right about that. The same way that running for 60 minutes and then lifting hard is going to limit your lifts, running for 60 minutes and then doing some sprints is probably going to limit your speed development in a vacuum.
Well, I think before we probably further confuse anybody listening, I think the most important thing to be done to start is what are we talking about when we're talking about speed?
Okay.
Well,
Well,
we've had this
there's a phrase in there that he uses, and I think we should define that for the
sprint.
audience first.
Does he say sprint?
I
What
says
does he
speed reserve.
speed reserve?
And the concept of speed reserve, I don't know how much you've read into it. It's kind of a little trendy in the track world. Didn't really even come into prominence until we were like in college, I think. And we went to a D3 school in the Midwest. Our coaches were not talking about this yet. So this is kind of after our days on
I
the
never
track.
heard the word threshold in college.
No,
Never, not once, or
no.
VO2 max for that matter. You had quality days and you had easy days and you had races.
It was race
Nothing
pacer
else.
faster.
It was never, yeah. So
Yeah.
we were behind the
So
times.
anyway, for the audience, speed reserve is basically just a function. It's the difference between your pace at your aerobic threshold and your maximum sprint speed. So your speed reserve is just how much do you have in the tank, how much is left between aerobic threshold running and all out sprinting. And the concept why people think that's really important, it started with long distance sprinting and middle distance track, is that all things being equal, if you have a faster maximum speed, you're running at a smaller percent of that during the race, giving you more in the tank when the real racing starts on the final lap. And so if you're running a 400-meter dash, the person with the fastest 200-meter dash should, in theory, win, because if they go out at the same pace as everyone else, they're running easier. And if they go out faster, well, they're running the same percent. And so with all those sprints, there's like a formula. You run your first 200 meters of your 400 at your 200-meter PR plus 1.5 seconds, and then your second one at 1 second slower than that, or whatever it is. So the faster you are, the formula says you will be better at the next distance. If two 1500 meters race, two 1500-meter runners race, the one with the faster 400 or 800-meter PR should outsprint the slower one at the end of the race, all things being equal. So that's the concept of speed reserve. They're talking your true fastest sprinting all out sprint ability impacts your ability to run at a lesser pace with more in reserve. So he is talking true sprinting.
Yeah, and that whole concept is always an interesting one because you watch top end track and field in particular, and
Mm-hmm.
the announcers generally like to lean on that speed reserve. They don't say the terminology, but they say, well, Jakob Ingebrigtsen has the fastest 1,500 meters in this 5K
Mm-hmm.
field. And so the 5K field is in trouble if Jakob is still around. And then Jakob goes and outkicks everybody. And they say, well, it's his 1,500 speed that they can't tolerate. And he wins by 2 seconds, right? It's easy to focus on those examples.
Mm-hmm.
But there are as many times when an 800-meter runner steps up to the 15 and gets dropped, even though his top end speed is better than the 1500, at some point strength becomes more important than speed. And that speed reserve, although can apply, I feel like it's not perfect
Yeah.
because eventually stay power wins out. And if you can grind them down, their speed reserve, they can never hit their power meter like as if they were fresh. Right. And so
Yeah.
it's an important thing to focus on. And you want to have that feather in your cap. But at the same time, I do think it's a little overrated.
Yeah. And I think not I think, that's why I wanted to lead with this question to set the stage for how we think about getting faster as a runner. Because this concept talks about getting faster from the top down, raising your ceiling from the ceiling versus the concept of raising your floor from below. And this concept really does matter in the world of track and field. With everyone assuming high level training, everyone's maxed out their aerobic capacity, everyone's maxed out their anaerobic capacity. If all that is equal, in theory, the fastest sprinter wins. But there's limits to all that, right? Like why does the 400-meter champion never win the 800?
Why is Usain Bolt not the marathon world record holder?
Right. Like there's a limit to this logic.
Yeah.
And there's some I've looked into this a little bit, Kirk, there, because it is intriguing, right? It's the same concept of if you lift really heavy, you become a better runner because it requires less force production to put out that force.
Mhm.
Um, there's some research that says pre-fatigue does not impact maximum sprint speed, and I don't care that the science says that. The lab can say that, but the real world has shown a million times over that if you run the legs off someone faster than you, you can outsprint them at the end, even if
Yep.
they can outsprint you fresh. And so it works right up until it doesn't. And the margins are very, very small at the world track and field stage. And so this does matter. You can't leave this stone unturned. But you and I have been very clear with each other in the audience that our belief is that sprint speed is almost never the limiting factor in the average runner's race performance.
Well, And we're not even getting to tangibles about how to improve your speed here
Not yet,
because no,
but
no,
this is how
no.
we think about it. So we're really talking through our thoughts right now.
Well, it becomes about energy allotment. And if you say, I think it's much more worth my time if I'm going to pick my battles to spend another 15 minutes working on my threshold or VO2 max, or I cut
Mhm.
that out so I can do my sprints. I'm going to say, cut the sprints out. Why don't you just run the legs off of this guy who's in quotes faster than you in a sprint race? Let's just run the wheels off of him. And he's 100 yards behind you at the finish. His kick doesn't matter because
Right.
you've left him prior to the opportunity to use that. Right.
Mhm.
And so it does get brushed under the rug in my mind very often. It's still an afterthought because we believe in systems development. And is sprinting a system? Yes. It is such the pointy end of the spear that do you want to use a stick that's 4 feet long, a sword that's 4 feet long with a little sharp point, or do you want to use a stick that's 8 feet long with a dull point? Well, you can't even reach me with your little 4 foot sword. So I'll take the 8 foot, right? And that's
Right.
the endurance portion of our training. And so it's worth our time to talk about because people wonder, and you
Right.
always hear, I need to be faster. I need more speed. I feel so slow. Um, so I'm not going anywhere with that other than like, that's how I think about it.
That's exactly it. So in this theory, now there's other components to this, but I'm going to boil it down to talking about it more like a cyclist would. I'm just going to say watts, like
Oh,
power, just to keep it clean, just so I can use a clean number. So let's say that the power that you can average for a race is 300.
speaking of watts, I think this conversation would be very relevant to a cyclist, even
And it
much
is.
more
And
so.
they're decades ahead of us in
Right,
this
but I'm saying this
conversation.
conversation is very real for a cyclist.
Yes.
But continue.
So let's just say for your race, you're going to try to average 300 watts, or that's what you just averaged in your last race, 300 watts. Your number, it doesn't matter to a runner what watts means. What you can keep is 300. So from a work faster to get faster approach, you would say, if I can work on my over 300 pacing. So I'm going to work at 320, 340, 350. If I get better at working at 320 and 350, I'm also by association going to be way better at working at 300. So if I go
Mhm,
over and over and over, if I can keep 350 for a few minutes, and I used to be able to keep 320, now holding 300 is going to be easier. The other way to look at it is if I can spend a ton of time at 280, 290, and that gets way easier and I'm more efficient at that, 300 is going to be significantly easier to hold as well. And that's the difference between raising your ceiling and raising your floor from below. We're raising that threshold up from below if you work at 280, 290 a bunch. You're trying to raise it from above if you work at 320. Either way, you're trying to make 300 easier or take 300 and move it up to 305 or 310. But the difference is, are you working from above or from below? And the assumption is that you can fall back on 300 because your support systems are maxed.
mhm,
If you work really fast at 350, 300's it's still going to be easier because 350 now is your new normal. But 300's only sustainable if your aerobic development is solid.
mhm,
And our premise is that almost no one's aerobic development is solid. And so that training style fails people because then, yes, 300 is easier for a little bit. And then your aerobic weakness shows up and you can't hold it. But if you spend a lot of time at 280 or 290, you are working the aerobic side so that it doesn't falter when you try 300 in a race. So that's just putting some numbers on it, kind of how we think about, are you training from above or are you training from below, and what that means for a runner. I think our assumption always is that people are underdeveloped aerobically.
well, the answer is you're training both sides of 300. How
Correct.
much are you allotting to each side of that? And the argument I think that you're making is 90% of our time maybe is spent at the 280, 290, and then 10% of our time is spent at 310 and above. And hopefully it comes together where we want it. I think the question you have to ask is Like, what's our objective here? Are we trying to run a faster 5K to marathon, and how will this help us? Or are we trying to run away from the cops after we've broken the law? Which one is the result we're looking for from this? Do I need to get away quick or get off the line? Am I going to be thrown into a 200-meter dash? And that's why we're asking this question.
Mhm.
Or is it literally, in case I come down to a kick finish after a 3-hour marathon, it's important to me to outlean the next girl next to me at the tape? Or is this all a mute conversation that doesn't even matter and doesn't even need to be touched for you really to see long term development? It gets confusing, right? And I
Mhm.
think a lot of that has to do um, with your background as an athlete,
Mhm.
knowing yourself and your natural tendencies. Are you a more power based or endurance based athlete? You and I get criticized from time to time for two things: looking at things through a man's point of view, and we can't often speak to the women's side of things. Do we not
Mhm.
get messages occasionally about that? I wish you could make a sports bra recommendation. Well, like, we don't wear sports bras. It's hard for us to do that. And then the second thing we get criticized for is that we look at this with the gift of speed from our younger years. We're coming at this with an explosive background of some sort, and often our listeners don't have that.
Right.
Right. And so, what I'm getting at is we only can look at it through your own lens, but it's a systems lens. I really do think it is. If you spent your entire life or your entire upbringing playing football as a running back, and now you're looking for an adult life pursuit,
Mhm.
well, how much does this speed matter for you at this point? I would say spend 0 of your percent of your time even
Right.
worrying about this. Whereas if you weren't an athlete growing up, you don't have a lot of spring, this could greatly benefit just you on the efficiency front to go say, hey, I might spend 50% of my time working on that end of my spear because it's just going to help me more efficient at slower paces. And so I'm just saying, like, the answer isn't necessarily clear
No,
because of those circumstances. Do you understand what I'm getting at?
I do. And I think that there's a second component to that, which is important, which is, are the strides even linked? There are
Great
really 2
question.
there are 2 types of runners. There
Do,
are runners. Go ahead.
well, no, just to, it's just, I was literally thinking about this during one of my last sessions. Uh, and I think hopefully this will set you up better for your point. Is I contemplated finishing with some 200-meter, what I would call sprints. And I did a bunch of them before my last 5K attempt on the track. And as I'm doing them, I'm like, this feels nothing like I'm going to feel in the race. This
Mhm.
is not anything I will ever touch because it's so foreign and powerful and open. Like, how is this going to translate to a pace that is 30 seconds a mile or more slower? And I
Yeah.
actually don't have an answer to it. So I'm very curious what you're going to say because I have a hard time making that make sense sometimes.
Mhm.
So please enlighten us all.
Well, there's 2 types of runners. There's the type that every time they change gears, their form changes, or at least when they change major gears, their form changes. And there's the type that runs kind of the same form all the way through until all out sprinting, and sometimes not even changing much for that. And the examples we'll use will be Matt Centrowitz.
Hmm.
Matthew Centrowitz runs one stride and one stride only. We've
Grant
watched him
Fisher,
run Grant Fisher. We've watched them run mile, 5K.
Parker
Centrowitz
Belby.
has jumped in the 800 before. We've watched them run 10Ks. They're always marching in the same stride. It just, they get faster doing it. You watch Matthew Centrowitz win the Rio 1500-meter gold, and they started out at like 410 or 420 mile pace. And his last lap was 50 flat, 50 seconds. And his stride didn't look much different ever throughout it. In fact,
Even
the
his
only way
arm
you could,
carriage,
yeah, the only way you could
unbelievable.
tell he was accelerating was watching the people's strides behind him change. And then you have someone like
Cole Hawker.
McCluskey, who had won the previous 1500-meter gold, who is running one form, and then when he starts sprinting, he is in a different form. Or Silas Kiplagat, or I would
McCluskey,
say
was he the
Stefan
heavier?
Hassan.
He was more of like the huskier end of the distance
Yeah,
runner, right? I'm thinking of, yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
You just have differences in
Manzano,
form.
little Manzano.
Leo Manzano, yeah.
Yeah.
So those type of people are getting different things out of different stride work. So I am a stride changer. If I go out and run a 50 or 40-meter dash, 40-yard dash, the stride I'm using has exactly 0 correlation to my mile stride, even my 800-meter or my 400-meter stride. And so that type of running where you are doing full recruitment, sprinting as fast as you can, is helping you recruit muscle fibers. It's helping you get more efficient at the act of sprinting. It's going to help you run easier at slower paces. But most of it is helping you get better at sprinting. You're going to get efficient at sprinting. You're going to be able to run the same pace with less tension in your body and then eventually faster with less tension. But it doesn't necessarily make you run 5K pace with less tension in your body or faster at 5K pace. It may help you at the end of the race be able to recruit more muscle fiber and sprint at the end of the race, but it won't help you from meters 1 through 4,900. It's going to help you from 4,900 to 5,000. Whereas the fastest stride you can run without changing to the next form is the stride that's going to make you more efficient at every pace underneath that. For me, that's around 1 mile pace. Maybe I could be convinced it's 800-meter pace, but it's not sprinting. Sprinting will help me sprint at the end of the race, and it may help with cramp prevention actually in an ultra, but it's not going to make me any faster throughout it. But running mile pace will actually make me more efficient at the paces slower than that because it's the same form. And then it falls under the auspices of if I can do this at this effort, running slower than that will just be much easier and more efficient for me.
You could just simplify like the 110% rule. The Fred Clary, which we
Hmm.
reference how often, is simple. It's not innovative what Dr. Clary said on our podcast years ago, but overtraining a stimulus so the stimulus you're attempting to achieve feels relatively easier, right?
Hmm.
The example of that could be I am trying to bench press 300 pounds one time. I'm going to put 315 on and I'm going to fight it on the way down and have somebody else help me press it, right? I'm going to get comfortable with 315 pounds on the bar, even though I can't press it back up, but I'm going to fight it like heck and just get used to it.
Hmm.
And then when I go and attempt 300 pounds, at least it's going to feel better than that. And
Yeah.
you could say the same thing running. You want to run a 5K at 7 minute pace. Well, if you run 6:30 pace and you do it a lot, it's going to make 7 minute pace feel a little more manageable and possibly sustainable because of that. And what you're outlining is if I sprint at max velocity and I am working as hard as I can, dare I say it makes mile pace feel comfortable, which I don't know if there is a thing. Yes, right? And so we're talking about like stretching out really the 110% rule in its
Right.
own right based on what your goal race or pace is. So then the question to follow that up is like, are we talking max velocity type stuff here? Is that what we're really dissecting? Or are we talking a percentage faster than our intended race pace,
Mhm.
right? What do you think?
Well, I what I think is that everything should be present if you want the most holistic training. I think distance runners should do some maximum velocity, maximum sprint speed training, but it needs to be a dash of a sprinkle in your week. It's a mechanical thing you're working on. It's a muscle fiber recruitment thing you're working on, but it's not looked at as a means of getting faster during my race. It's a health thing and it's an end of the race thing. And for most athletes out there, for most people listening to us, they will never find themselves, almost never, maybe once or twice in their life, shoulder to shoulder with someone with 400 meters to go, having got to the same level of exertion the whole race and just
Mhm.
raced all the way through. And now it's time to put your cards out on the table and see. No, the race reports you get when people find themselves in a sprint finish is I either faded, and some woman caught me with 200 meters to go and I outsprinted her, or I was picking it up and I was picking it up and I caught some guy with 100 meters left and I outsprinted him. In neither one of those situations was your race changed by how much maximum speed sprinting you had done. Neither one of those were affected by it. The only time it matters is when you hit an equally matched person that you've raced the whole race near and around, and it comes down to a sprint. Almost
I,
never Does the average person find themselves in that situation? And so I think the average person needs to dictate or to dedicate the least amount of time each week to getting the benefit of that skill.
Yeah,
That's how I look at it.
I could not agree more. I think, not to be wasting our listeners' time because we attempt not to do that, but I honestly think this conversation is irrelevant if you're racing longer than a mile. Almost irrelevant in
Yeah.
adulthood. Where it becomes very relevant is you have 1,500-meter runners who are all gonna finish within a second and a half of each other
Mhm.
when it's all said and done, and who has a half a stride more in them by the time they cross the tape, and that's the difference between first and fifth, right? I think
Mhm.
there's a big argument to be had about splitting hairs in this part of the
Yes.
conversation. I think for most listening, you're right. Like the chance that you find yourself in that situation where your power meter is exactly as dulled as the person next to you with 200 meters to go is probably a non factor in any race
Yeah.
other than when I outsprinted Hobie Call. I'm pretty sure we're exactly at the same
And you
power
should
meter.
win that.
I
He was
probably
a
should.
5K guy, you were a 1,500-meter guy and 10 years younger.
That's
5 years.
exactly. And so it's funny you say that because um it was in the back of my mind. I'm glad you brought that up. The question I have is like, can this even be really trained? Is it already in you or not in you, sort of thing, right? Like you have to ask
Yeah.
that too. Um,
You know
uh,
what? I almost don't care about that.
well, I'm not saying I care about it. I just want to
I'm
ask the
saying
question.
improving it. I almost don't care if people get better at it because I look at sprinting for the average distance runner the way I look at powerlifting. You do it because it's good for you, not
Mm,
because you're going to necessarily see the improvement on course.
mm.
You do it so that you are still pliable and elastic and explosive when you're 60, when you're 70. Because if you start sprinting now, your tail off is still going to occur, but it's going to happen from a much higher place. And anything you're used to doing, you maintain longer. You lift now so that you have bone density at 80. So you're not stooped and hunched over at 65. Yes, it also has some carryover to sport, but we mostly want you to lift heavy because it's good for you. We've said on here before, at the world level, world records have been set by people doing every type of strength training, including non existent. However, quality of life is most often achieved by people who do some strength training. And that's the same way I look at sprinting. Should you do it as a runner? Yeah, probably. Should you do it as a human? Absolutely. Every human should be able to lift heavy and sprint fast. That's good for you. And so that's how I look at speed training and getting faster. I don't look at sprinting for improving race times. I just think you should do it.
I love it when I feel like about 2 years ago, I started really bringing the longevity piece into the conversation as I was approaching 40. Right? As like it started to become part of the conversation in the early years of our podcast. It didn't quite surface as much as it does now. And it just makes me so proud when I hear you've been going to it a little more lately. Like, no, have you noticed that about,
Yeah.
hey, like we got to start thinking about it when our hairs start to gray and like longevity now. And God, I'm glad you made that argument because I could not agree with you
Yeah.
more on the strength side, which we've talked about plenty, but the sprint side as well. Max muscle recruitment and power output just for full range of motion of your stride would be so
Hmm.
beneficial for maintaining it long term. So maybe working max velocity could make you a better 5K as a 50-year-old just because of accessibility.
Right.
Now, if we're having this conversation about 25-year-olds, it could be different, but there's a whole other can of worms with
Right.
the longevity piece where I would argue if you take the same engine, the same VO2 max, the exact same 5K time of let's use 15 minutes clean as a peak in your heyday, and you take one person who sprints and keeps that up regularly and the other person just works systems, I would say at 50, the person who sprints is going to rise to the top slowly but surely, wouldn't
They
you
will.
think?
They
So
will.
there's a whole conversation there too, and I don't know if we need to go down that route, but I'm just glad you brought it up, Bracken.
Good. But what I'm going to finish with on that is just saying it's a dose. You just dose it small. It doesn't need to be a focus of training. What you do need to do, and this is how we think about getting faster, is get faster at being slower. If you're trying to be a great 5K runner, you need to be a good 10K runner. If you want to run a good half marathon, you better be in shape for a marathon because I've said it 3 times now, our firm belief is that almost every person listening to this is aerobically underdeveloped. Almost everyone. It doesn't mean we don't worry about sprints. We do it, but
Can
we're
I
not
clarify?
doing them to get faster at your race.
Can I clarify that aerobically underdeveloped?
Yes.
Because that could be insulting to some people. Um, I would include myself. I would include
Yeah.
you. I
I'm
would include,
certainly aerobically underdeveloped.
and if you didn't believe that if you believed you were aerobically overdeveloped, what's the point of trying to improve anymore? Eh, the only hope we have to get better is aerobic development. So even those who are good are still not developed to where they want to be. Our only hope, the only reason we should keep showing up is to consider ourselves underdeveloped from where we want to be.
Yeah.
And so underdeveloped isn't a slap in the face. It's saying that is the key that unlocks the door to improvement in your run times is aerobic development. In that case, we're all underdeveloped from where we want to be. If that weren't the case, give up, right? That's
Yeah.
our shiny object to chase is the development of that. So you said it twice now, and I'm like, "Now, some people might be like, I am not aerobic undeveloped. Be like, yeah, you are. We all are.
Yeah. And
Anyway,
here's a quick test for you. Maybe it's not super quick, but do a lactate threshold test or an aerobic threshold test. And you get the pace for that. So, for example, the uphill athlete one is you just run either nose breathing or at the heart rate you believe to be your aerobic threshold. And you just run that on a treadmill. And then you get to the point like my heart rate, my aerobic threshold is 158. So I warm up to 158 and then I hold 158 for like 15. I hold that pace for 15 minutes. And as long as I stay within that 158 range, I mean, I'm oversimplifying. That's essentially my aerobic threshold, but I already know mine's 158. But whatever pace you're holding to get yourself and to sit steady at 158, you should be able to hold that for at least 3 hours. Your aerobic threshold
you should be able to
pace
hold that until when? Until what happens?
until you can't hold the pace anymore and you have to start slowing down. You should be able to hold at least 3 hours of work. So for most of you, if you think about what your aerobic threshold heart rate is, ventilatory threshold 1, could you just go out and run 3 to 4 hours at that pace? If you can't, you're underdeveloped. Your lactate threshold heart rate, mine's 166. The pace to hit 166 right now, I cannot hold for an hour. Even though physiologically that is ventilatory threshold 2 for me, which equates to 60 minutes of race pace. I could probably hold it for
For a
40,
developed athlete.
40 to 45 minutes. I can hold it for, but I should be able to hold it for 60. So until I can hold that for 60, I am underdeveloped. And that's okay. These are goals and things to reach for. So just think your aerobic heart rate, high end aerobic. Can you hold for 3, 4, 5 hours? The answer is no. You're underdeveloped. And that
Y
means you have a low hanging fruit to hit. But sprints aren't going to address that.
Yeah, well, and still, even if you could hit that, like, I think my watch reads 5:37 pace and 171 heart rate.
Hmm.
Well, I held 5:27 for a half marathon, so obviously I can hold that for an hour,
Hmm.
but that's still, like, the key to me still improving that even further is the answer you're talking about, which
Yeah.
is aerobic development. So let's give, I think we've talked sort of theory enough,
Yeah.
big picture stuff enough. If we were to entertain this, um, I do believe I'll benefit from working my top end speed in a
Hmm.
vacuum, let's call it. I think this should be an ear should perk up more for our older listeners or those who feel self proclaimed slow. Okay. Um, I had an athlete um, recently who stopped doing her I call them sprints after a recovery run, but I prescribe sprints in quotes after recovery runs once or twice a week, and she had stopped doing them because of some injury stuff and was cross training, got back to running on her recovery efforts, and it's like I need to add the sprints back in. just because I feel so slow. And she's been adding the sprints back in for like the last 2 weeks. And whether it's placebo or not, she's like, I feel so much better. Oh my goodness,
Mhm.
it's opening things up for me. She's in her late 40s, I believe. And maybe around that age where just opening it up might feel better, breaking through the rust, right? So, point being, whether you're maybe the aging athlete or you just feel slow, what is protocol then, right?
Mhm.
Like, let's say you spend 8 hours a week. So, okay, 6 hours a week endurance training. What amount of time do you need to, what's the minimum effective dose that doesn't impede your other training but can allow you to see improvement? Um, Things like that. For this woman, Amy, it's what's 4 to 6 15-second sprint and pickups twice a week.
Mhm.
What is that time allotment? Maybe she's spending 15 total minutes of her life doing this. What are your first thoughts on minimum effective dose, how to plug it into your week, what is needed? What do you think?
Well, I think the minimum effective dose for any athletic pursuit or exercise or skill is one more occurrence per week than you're currently doing.
Okay.
So so if it's 0, it is literally 1. If one time per week you practice running fast. Now that could mean the fastest you can hold your normal stride before sprinting, or that can mean sprinting. Honestly, I don't really care which one you start with. And maybe it's just 1 per week of each. That would be my perfect world prescription. Once per week, you're running right around mile pace or a little faster, and you're doing it for 20 to 30 seconds at a time and resting like 4 times as long. Just a few of those. And then once per week, you're running 12 seconds or less, probably 10 seconds or less, as fast as you can possibly move, maybe even like 8 seconds or less, and taking like 10 times that amount in recovery. One each per week and doing like 4 to 6 reps to start with. I would probably even do the maximum sprinting on a slight uphill at first just for
Mm.
injury risk mitigation. One each per week. That's it. Extend that out until you're doing like 8 to 10 reps and then consider adding a third day.
So you're saying 30 to 45 seconds maybe at like a sustained sprint speed and then 10-second bouts of, whoa, there's no sustaining this. I am hitting max velocity.
Yeah, I think 20 to 40 seconds and 5 to 10 seconds.
Okay. Um, the
Once
question
per week, each of those.
the question that gets posed by this Q&A, which spawned a whole episode. So thanks for submitting that, Jorge. Also, Jorge, we got to pick our Spanish names in high school, and I chose Jorge. So I got a soft spot for you, Jorge. Um, is okay. So theory is, would it make more sense to do your sprints or your speed, true speed? We're not talking interval like development sessions before you go and then do a recovery run, right? I think was sort of the
Yeah,
question posed. But then you have the whole can of worms of like, well, I'm not going to walk out my door in my Hoka Cliftons, sprint down my block 4 or 5 times cold, and then go
right.
for my recovery run. Like that is a fool's errand. Do not do that. Would it more look like, because I don't want this to be an inconvenience for people. They won't do it. It's already hard enough to cram stuff in with life, right? I mean,
Mhm.
really, we're not speaking to professional athletes for the most part. We're speaking to weekend warriors and moms and dads and busy people. And so, like, if I were to build this myself, what I might do is 5 to 10 minutes of running down the road on my route, stop and do my dynamics, work myself through it, hit my sprints. I might be a mile or two from home, get it all done, and then continue on my route and finish out my aerobic work. That's how I would end up doing this from home, where, okay, yeah, it ate up another 10 minutes because I stopped dynamic sprints, continued on. But if I were to work that into my own program, that's how I would do it. That way, I'm getting two birds, one stone, not hitting my speed at the end of it, but you do need some sort of warm up to make sure you're ready for that sort of effort level.
Mhm.
So, if I'm real world projecting, that's where I would start. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much the same place. If I'm doing all out sprinting, I am 9 times out of 10 gonna be fresh. And this is one since I do it slightly uphill, I park by the trails. I do 800 or 1,000 or 2,000 meters of easy running, go through a quick routine of dynamics, and then I do them uphill. Slight
And would you
uphill.
say, like, that first sprint in quotes or 2, maybe holding back slightly just to work into it?
I go like 7, 8,
Yep.
9, 10, 10, 10.
That's exactly how I would do it, yep.
Yep. And build into it. The one thing we do not ever have to do early on is sprint off the line. All of these early on, you're rolling into them. We in college, you either had standing start or rolling start, meaning I'm standing on the line and I'm bursting off the line into the start, or I'm rolling start, which means you jog up into it, hit your watch as you cross the line, and accelerate up into your pace. This is all rolling start.
Mhm.
All of it's rolling start because the benefit of snapping off the line is for explosive sport. You just really don't need that for anything we're doing, especially early on. That is the stride that hurts you. It's that stride, or it's the one stride too far at the end of the sprint, extending a little too far. Those are the two strides that hurt you. And so you avoid those two strides. So yeah, you move my first rep, I start at a 6 and build to a 7. Second one, I start at a 7, build to an 8, 8 to 9, and then I go 9 to 10 the rest of the way through. But it happens in the first 10 minutes of my run. And then if I change shoes, I change shoes. If not, I just continue on the trails. I talked about doing this before my midweek long runs. That's my plan moving forward. Run some 150s, 200s on the track or hill sprints, and then hop right onto the trails and continue my 50 to 70-minute run. If it's mile pace or slower, 800 pace or slower, those 200s at the end of my easy run, that's afterwards. If I'm sprinting, it's prior. I finish with my fastest stride I can maintain without changing to a sprint stride.
Yeah, I think people listening probably envision, like, the NFL combine and watching these athletes sprint the 40, like,
Mhm.
all out from the gun, like, how fast is your reaction time and then right to pace. We're not looking to run your fastest first 40 in these sprints, we're looking to run your fastest second 40 if, let's say,
Yeah.
this is an 80-meter effort. So give yourself time to ramp up. Last thing we need is 60-year-old Johnny pulling a hammy when he goes to experiment with this the first time and then
Mhm.
sliding into our DMs. So
The
let's avoid
newer
that.
you are to true sprint speed, the longer you take to build into it. The longer you take during each rep and the longer you take during the rep, like rep 5 or 6, you may finally hit it.
Right.
Once you're used to it, by rep 2, you're hitting it within a few strides. But
Right.
you're not trying to hit it early, you're trying to get there. Because remember, going from 0 to 1, everything's beneficial. So take the minimum amount of risk you can take at all times for this.
Nor I like this the most as I'm sort of thinking this through um, for myself. And I think I mentioned a few weeks ago how even accessing the top speed feels like I got to work a little harder for it. So I need to lean into this concept of at least
Mhm.
touching the 110% rule more often. I really like this for the midweek long run. Like,
Yeah.
let's say you run a Monday through Saturday schedule. Thursdays is when we prescribe our midweek long runs on the running public training plans or skill work or, things like that. I love the idea of, hey, I got 70 to 80 minutes to work with today, anyways. It's kind of a free day, meaning I can work skill.
Mhm.
Great. This would be considered a skill.
Yeah.
So throwing it in the beginning of your midweek long run would be such a perfect place for this on like a Thursday. Anybody following a traditional run plan
And you know
might be
what?
where I play with it. I might even play with it there just to see.
I think you should. And then the absolute easiest way to do this is between the end of your warm up and the start of your first interval on any quality day.
Hmm.
If you're already going to be going through the motions of warming up fully, just throw it in there. Yeah, you're going to be more fatigued and delayed for your first interval, but who cares? That's the time to do it. Do your
Yeah.
strides and then do like 4 or 5 maximum sprints. And then maybe at the end of the workout, throw on a couple mile pace things. But there's no prescription for best way of doing this for the average runner. You just dose it and get used to it, and you'll just be a better overall athlete for it.
All right. We're going to rapid fire question at you.
Oh,
Questions, maybe. This is off the cuff, but I want to see how important you really think this is. I want to see if we're giving this lip service to give it lip service or if it holds some weight. Okay.
Mhm.
The workout 4 by a mile with 1 minute rest. You're a 5K to half marathon athlete. This workout now becomes 3 by a mile with this sprint work, or it stays 4 by a mile, but it's not included. Where would
Four
you
by
go with?
mile.
Okay.
I
I'm going to
might
just,
cheat and tack on some 200s at the end.
okay. That's not cheating. I think that's a great finisher to anything, but it's
Yeah.
not the clean running we're talking about or
Yeah.
the sprint form. Okay. 8 by 800 or 6 by 800 with sprint focus before or after.
You know what? I think I'm going to give my answer for all these. I'm not compromising the workout to fit this in. I would rather
16 by
take
400. Oh,
no,
or okay. So
no,
I was hoping you would give me this answer.
I'm not gonna, but I will. I will cannibalize 8 to 10 minutes of any easy run for this. And
I
I
think that
didn't know I would say that until you asked it.
I think that is the right answer. I think we're simmering it down. Don't take away from quality for any of this if you can avoid it. Adding on finishers is a great way to at least touch it, but I would say don't cannibalize quality to do this. Instead, a little bit of time away from
Yeah.
small amount of time away from some easy recovery, low grade aerobic work.
So
I
I'm
think
going
would
to
be the
propose
answer.
something to you then. Who benefits most from this work? Who will actually get faster during a race from doing this? Let's call it mile pace or faster in full sprint. Who would actually benefit pace wise on race day from doing this? Is there
Those
anyone? And if so, who?
100%. Those who already avoid speed work like the plague because they hate it.
Mhm.
We have a lot of people who it's very easy to put your running shoes on and head out the door. You trail monsters in particular. I don't need that, right? Like I've been putting in 50-mile weeks for years, but like the last time I did 400s, I couldn't tell you because I hate them. So somebody who shies away from speed work and always leans into the grindy stuff or doesn't do quality at all, I think this would be a great start. Um, I think, as we spoke about the aging athlete, in particular, menopausal and postmenopausal women tend to go, I feel slow, I feel sluggish because of hormonal changes and bodily changes. I have a handful of people I'm working with who I'm thinking of, and it's like they're all in that menopausal, postmenopausal phase, and they all start to feel like they're tanking on the sharp end of the spear. I think maybe that category of human.
Mhm.
And then I think if your hair is mostly gray, I'm thinking I'm going to look at you as well here. So I'm going to say those three camps. What do you think?
I agree with all of that. And I'm going to add one camp, which I actually look at as the first camp. It's hard to say that the aging camp is not the first camp, but the first place I look to, and I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said,
Mm-hmm.
uh, is sloppy runners.
Ugly runners?
Sloppy. Ugly
Really
too, but sloppy.
ugly looking, a lot of ground contact time, that sort of thing.
Slow stride, loping stride, arms moving over, knees splaying out or rolling in. People that need mechanical fix, primarily in that they have slow turnover. Their feet spend too much time on the ground and off the ground. This fixes that very quickly. You can do all the drills you want to do, high knees, butt kicks, A skip, B skip, C skip, all that stuff, which is great. The quickest way to get better at running is to run fast. And for that athlete, if you start adding this in 2, maybe 3 times per week, your 5K or 10K pace will actually improve because you're simply getting better at the act of running. When we said at the beginning, this is important for pros playing in the margins. This is also important for people who the entire page is a margin because they've filled none of it with quality writing yet.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know how to run well before you can even worry about using your aerobic and anaerobic capacity. If you run, I'm going to, Colleen, I'm sorry, I'm going to curse, but I'm going to quote Richard Diaz. If you run like shit, you can't win a race. And some of us just really do. And I'm going to put myself in closer to that camp. I've talked about it on here, Kirk, that since moving back from Colorado, my cadence has slowed significantly because in Colorado, I moved like 99% of my runs went to trails and it was great. And I was really training with purpose. And I came back here and I've had some injuries, but I still do 99% of my training on trails. But they're more technical than they were in Colorado. And more importantly, they don't have mile, 2 mile, 3 mile downhill stretches where you're running 200 steps per minute.
Mhm.
I've lost that 110% rule of turnover and cadence. And as a result, my 100% cadence has dropped down to like 90% cadence. I have just slowed my stride. And so I did a run this past week where all I did was focus on that. And the week before, I did a run where all I did was focus on that. The quickest way to get better at that is just run really, really fast a few times a week.
We
Ground
shouldn't
contact time improves so much quicker.
the people whose foot seems to spend a second on the ground every time it touches it.
If you're slapping the
Um,
ground, yeah,
mhm. Big squishy shoes just sinking into the earth and taking forever to get back off it.
that's
Uh,
another category. If you run only in maximal shoes, you should get in
mhm.
some submaximal and sprint a few times per week.
Um, and we shouldn't even open the can about you just brought it up, the cheat code of downhill running if we're going to work on just the ability to turn over. That's a whole
Yeah.
hack in itself. But let's not, because that wasn't the subject matter. Um,
Should we bow tie it or do you have more to say?
I mean, I'm ready to bow tie it. Not
Okay.
because I don't love talking to you. I just don't know. We could draw this out for another hour. We could,
Yeah,
of
we could.
course, we could do that to anything. But I think it served its purpose. Bow tie it for us. Your brain's a little clearer than mine today.
Well, the way we think about running faster in races is by running slightly slower than what you're going to run in pay on race day as often as humanly possible. We think about building it up. We raise the floor from below. We don't think about it for the average runner as raising the ceiling from the top. However, when we think about sprinting, we think everyone should be doing it and every single person could probably benefit from the health and the stride benefits of going maximum effort at least once per week.
Bow tie, tied. That's a single knot. Do we need to double knot it?
I don't think we can double knot it because it's so much opinion.
Yeah, and honestly, it might be a little bit of not imposter syndrome, but it's something that I haven't really implemented myself, and you're beginning to. So maybe we can double knot it after some experimentation if we choose to do so.
We did it
Um,
so often for so many years that we coasted on it for a long time. And then we've both felt in recent
yeah.
years it fading. And
Hmm.
that's a bad feeling. And that feeling of it, of the reduction, is probably how most people who didn't run college track normally feel running, where
Right.
you don't just start running fast and feel like you're clicking right into your stride. And so if that's how everyone feels, then maybe we should dose this a little more.
Yeah. I agree with you. All right. One last shout out or reminder. I know we do our best not to run ads on this podcast, and we have not. Maybe day one we had a VJ partnership, but we don't run ads. But the beginning of our podcast often starts with a plug for the Running Public Training Plan, and my guess is by this point it goes in one ear and out the other when you guys are listening because you've heard it enough. Um, so I'm just going to plug it real quick. It's the beginning of the year. We have a great build season ahead. Um, and it's only $20 a month and you can cancel at literally any time. And if you're looking for a little direction in this off season, building with purpose, feeling confident in what you're doing when you put your shoes on, I think you're silly if you don't sign up and pay us your money and give it a try. So I think you should go to therunningpublic.com. I think you should click on training plans and I think you should comb through it. Um, I think it'd be a worthwhile itch to scratch if you've been curious and there's no commitment to it. Um, and if you want to support us, that'd be a good way to do it as well. Because we don't have a Patreon, we don't take advertisement. I've been meaning to say that for a little bit, but I wanted to save it for after the first of the year because a lot of people like to start clean, and now's the chance to do so. So I hope you don't mind. I threw that in there, Bracken.
I don't. I've been watching more podcasts and a lot of reviews because the running event down in Texas happened in December. So I've been looking through all the 2025 launches for shoes. And then David Roach actually got me back on the track of listening to other coaches after he broke down how he approached Leadville. And that leads to another video in the algorithm. And some of these podcasts, you start with minutes and minutes of ad reads. And it is so distasteful that I will even skip the whole video for it. And it kind of just cemented in my mind that I'm glad we don't do that. This sounds like tooting our own horn, and maybe I am, but it's just really, really hard for me to listen to. And so we're going to do our best to keep the lights on without doing that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So, yeah, sign up for the training plan.
Well, and we did this podcast for almost 3 years without monetizing it in any capacity with the hope to build your trust. Um, we don't have a Patreon. It's a way to support us, whether you follow the plans to a T or you just pick and choose the workouts that you like, or you screenshot them and save them for a future to plug it into your own programming. People look at this and think, well, if I can't follow the plan verbatim, or I have my own tendencies and ways I like to do things, so I don't want to take somebody's training plan because I'm not sure if I'm going to want to. Well, you can literally just poach workouts and plug it into your own system if you would like. New ideas, test workouts, things that maybe you haven't thought of before. It doesn't need to be an all or nothing. Would we like it to be? Of course, but it does not have to be. And so you can look at it in multiple ways. And I think some people don't subscribe because they have their own personal training biases, which I understand. I certainly do. But I think sometimes just getting out of your own line of sight can be helpful. And that doesn't mean thorough following. It could mean, as I said, picking and choosing as well for ideas or understanding the flow of our training and applying it in your own way. So something to think about.
Exactly. Well, thank you for bringing it up, Kirk. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you on Thursday.
Bye.